So, welcome back, Corey. We've got some follow-up items here. They're all yours. So, what is your positive edge? Did you figure it out?
Not really. Not to where I came to like some real strong, I mean, it's got to be teaching. Like I think that's the helping people get from one place to another. What I don't know about and what I wasn't able to like resolve is like, does that mean classroom teaching? Does that mean mentoring? Does that mean coaching? So it's like there's a bunch of words there that all kind of work together, and I don't know what it actually means, but it's got to definitely be helping people advance or get better, add value to their life. I don't know what it might be. I'm trying not to like say the same thing that yours is, because it's like mine. I can tell you that when you say yours, mine is different than yours. I can tell
Okay.
you that. Like I know that inherently it's different, but I don't know exactly know how. So no, that's the best I can give you on my positive edge. Is still needs to be sharpened or refined.
I want to double click on that because you mentioned it has to be teaching. Is that because you feel like if it's something else, then your whole life is a lie, or
No,
just
not
that
at
it's
all.
teaching and you just have to dial it in a little bit more?
No, but I think it's like whatever this word is, teaching, coaching, mentoring, whatever it is, right? Like I've known that since I was, I don't know, 10, 11. Like it's
Yeah.
been a really long time that I've known that. It just so happens that it aligns with my current profession, which
Yeah.
is good because, it all works out kind of that way. But even like I think about leading the boys, different groups that I do with the boys, or volunteering at church or whatever it might be. It's all around this idea of like education, mentoring, kind of thing. So I think that's just the thing that I'm naturally going to do, and that's the thing that I think God has gifted me at doing, which is pretty cool.
Gotcha. Yeah, I figured that was the case, but the way that you said it, it was kind of like we have to clarify.
No, yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Okay, so the next one I had was what's the thing I can't not do? What am I naturally doing? What does that mean? So like I told you, naturally teaching, but I don't think that's the thing I can't not do. Like I don't see those two things as being true. I think the thing I couldn't not do is care about technology. Like I really like technology. I've always really liked technology. I mean, ever since I would take computers apart from like sitting on my parents' kitchen table, and my mom would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm taking the computer apart." And she'd be like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Why not? I mean, let's see what it's made of, and let's see if we can put it back together." And she's like, "Yeah, but that's really expensive." And I'm like, it'll be fine. Like everything's gonna be okay." And then even when like I have gone through seasons where I try to delete all of my nerdy tech podcasts, and like I'm just like I'm not gonna listen to nerdy tech podcasts. I'll last like a couple weeks, and then it's like nah. Like I just naturally find myself like walking to my car, downloading the latest episode of whatever nerdy tech podcast, just to see what's going on in the world, in the tech world. So I think that's the thing I at this point in my life I can't not do, which is kind of weird and kind of telling. But there you go.
Nice. So all of this, and actually the last episode, um, leads very well into the life theme cohort, which I have to mention here briefly. I don't actually have any follow up action items from the last book we did, which was Good Work by Paul Millard, and I still am very excited about that one. 2 weeks later, how do you feel about it? Do you still think it's a double 5-star book?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I got a lot out of that when I reflect on the different aspects of it, a good bit in the last 2 weeks, even while we're reading another book or another book and a half, depending on what you're reading right now. So yeah, I like that book a lot. I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend it.
Me too. So it's kind of interesting that that leads into the whole concept of the life theme. You talked about the positive edge and comparing it to mine, and that was a conversation that we had in that last episode. Was kind of what makes us tick. So the life theme cohort basically is a 6-week cohort that my wife and I co-lead on helping people dial in their personal mission statements. So there's a 5-step process that we walk through where you identify the moments of impact, the moments where you really came alive, you dream big, you create an image, a specific image of your ideal future that you're working towards, you identify your personal core values, then you condense it all into a single sentence life theme. And then the 6th week is basically everybody gets on a call and we share ours. I really can't overstate how much more valuable this process is when you do it together. I mean, I basically just gave you the whole process in those 5 different steps. And I do have a free email course for people who are just kind of kicking the tires on this sort of thing. But as this episode is published, that life theme cohort is actually kicking off on Monday. So it starts on November 11th. You could probably join after that if you wanted to, and you wouldn't be too far behind. But I did want to make sure that people knew that this was happening. And I kind of revamped how I do my cohorts. Everything is now bundled inside of the community. So this is actually the first time now that the community is open under this new format. But essentially, when you join the community, you get access to all the cohorts that happen within 1 calendar year. So that would include this life theme cohort, which starts November 11th, and it wraps up, I think, December 16th. It's basically a Monday to a Monday. And then there's a practical PKM cohort, which is all the Obsidian stuff that's going to happen in January. There's also monthly workshops. So I did a personal retreat workshop. I did a mind mapping workshop, going to do a journaling workshop. All of those video replays and everything are in the community as well. And the cost of the community is $500 a year. So if you are interested in joining the life theme cohort, you actually just join the community, and then you can opt into the cohort, and everything is there. And that website, if you want to learn more about the life theme cohort specifically, is mikeschmitz.com/lifetheme. I didn't actually even share this with you, but yesterday I recorded a little promo video, which is at the top of that page now, which I like a lot.
Nice.
Just like a little 2-3 minute promo video. And yeah, so that's happening. And if you want to walk through the process with us, then mikeschmitz.com/lifetheme is where you would go to do that.
Very cool. I think that's clean, right? Like that seems like a very clean way to do it, where it's like a one-time thing for the year, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
So it's a one-time cost for the year, but then I can participate in as much as I want to throughout that year. I like that a lot. That's good.
Yeah. And so just for disclosure here, like I'm experimenting still, but my thought with this is I want it to be simple, and this is either going to make sense and you're in, or it's not for you, and that's fine. But what I don't like is the escalating cost of the cohorts. Like I'm going through Rite of Passage right now. It's the last one, but it was $4,000, and I applied for a scholarship and I got in for $500. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do this for $500. I can't do it for $4,000.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, why don't I just charge $500, for the year? And then whoever wants to join can join. And I don't have to worry about trying to get as many sales as I can during the initial period. So that's the thought process there.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I think it's a good way to do it. And if nothing else, you'll learn, right? I mean,
yep.
You'll learn from it. So,
all right. Well, let's jump into today's book, which is Meditations for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. I didn't really know what this was when I picked it, and I feel like I owe you a little bit of an apology.
No, this is so good, because I'm thinking the same thing. I start reading this book and I thought, this book is nothing like I thought it was going to be. And It was the title for me. I thought it was Meditation for Mortals. It's Meditations for Mortals. And that S really changes the book. So I'm so glad you said that. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I was so excited that you said that. Okay.
Well, the reason I said I think I owe you an apology is that this really isn't a great format for a bookworm book, because it's an Oliver Burkeman book, and I really liked 4,000 Weeks. I highly recommend people go read that one. And that there's a lot of the 4,000 Weeks, a lot of those ideas show up in this one as well. But the way this one is formatted is it is essentially like it's a 28-day personal study. And I didn't know that when I picked it. I think the quote unquote correct way to go through this book is probably one of these per day. Although the Amazon listing says you could do one a day, or you could just do it in a couple of different sittings. I did the couple different sittings. I do think it's probably better if you bite off one of these a day and then you just kind of chew on it. But I don't know. It's still a cool book, but it's broken up into 4 different weeks, which are kind of the sections. And I feel like that's probably the best way to tackle this book. So week 1 is on being infinite. Week 2 is on taking action. Week 3 is on letting go. Week 4 is on showing up. So if you are listening to this in a podcast player that supports chapters, those will be the chapters, is those different sections. And then inside those different sections, I think we probably each pick one day with a key idea that we really want to talk about. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So this is a pretty short book. There's lots of different chapters because each day is a chapter essentially. And I think it's still only like 160 pages, but a lot of those, because there's so many chapters, you have a couple sentences on the last page and then there's a whole bunch of blank space. So there's not a whole lot here in terms of, I gotta get through a bunch of material. It's a very easy read, I would say. Although, as mentioned, we did it wrong. We probably should have taken more time with this. There's those 4 parts, and then there's also an introduction at the very beginning and then an epilogue. So I think we probably jump in to the introduction here first, which is on the imperfect life. There's a couple of quotes here. The one I really liked is things look... Shoot, I wrote this down wrong. I said, things a book about how the world opens up once you realize you're never going to sort your life out. Things are like a book about how the world opens up. I have to look that up again. Dang it. I wrote it down wrong.
I'm seeing if I called that out too.
You going to help me out?
Well, I'm trying. I'm seeing if I quoted that same thing. You and I actually quote a lot of stuff similar, which is kind of funny. But I don't think I have this one.
Probably, you know what? It's probably, this is a book about how the world opens up once you realize you're never going to sort your life out. There we go. Change that in the mind.
Yeah, that would actually make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is the perfect introduction to this, which is why I wanted to call out the quote. I mean, on the tin, it's a 28-day guided whatever. It's not a course. It's not even like a daily reader. I don't know what you would call it, but I feel like this just sets the stage really well. He also talks about how most entrepreneurs are just a walking anxiety disorder harnessed for productivity. And I felt a little bit targeted by that.
That's funny.
Yeah. But also, I think the other thing I jotted down here, which is really important going into the rest of this, is you have to take it as a given that you'll never get on top of everything.
Okay, I told you we quoted a lot of stuff together because I had that exact same one I wanted to bring up too, so keep going.
Okay, well, I'll actually hand it off to you there because that's hearkening back to 4,000 Weeks a little bit, and I'm curious as to your perspective here with the imperfect life in the introduction.
Yeah, so what's really interesting to me on this is it takes a very defeatist start. And I don't mean defeatist in like a give up on the world kind of defeatist way, but in this idea of get rid of this thought that you can actually do some of the stuff that you want to do, or that you can have this perfect life, or you can do all this stuff. And here are the key words I would have for this. You'll never get on top of everything. Imperfectionism is the outlook that understands. When you give up on the unwinnable struggle, right? There are all these, it's a very negative opening section. This introduction is incredibly negative, but not in a way that turned me off from reading the rest of the book. Almost in a refreshing way of it wasn't self-help motivation. It wasn't this rah rah sis boom bah, go out and slay the day, blah blah blah. It was more or less all right, here's the deal. You're not gonna do this. You're never gonna win. It's get rid of perfectionism, and then once you've accepted that, now let's take 28 days and think about what we can do in spite of this whole thing. So in spite of might be the phrase that I come out to is in spite of this being reality, what do we do with the 28 days? So it was kind of a refreshing, I'm by no means an overly negative person, but it was kind of a refreshing take on a way to look at, not meditation, because that's what I thought it was, but
yeah.
on this way of thinking about life and about productivity and about, being successful.
Yeah, so this is kind of hearkening to, in 4,000 Weeks, he talks about the cosmic insignificance theory. Have you heard me bring this up before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and every time I try to explain this to somebody, it sounds kind of depressing. But the whole idea behind the cosmic insignificance theory is that you have such a small part to play in the universe that what you do doesn't really matter.
Yep.
It's sort of the idea behind Memento Mori. Also,
Yep.
it's like, remember, you're going to die someday. You're not so great there, hotshot. And I actually built that Memento Mori piece into my Obsidian Daily Note. I see the percentage of my life that has passed by on the average 80-year lifespan every single day when I journal, which freaks some people out. But he talks about in 4,000 Weeks, and he alludes to it in this book too a little bit, the idea that it's actually pretty comforting because now you don't have to put all this pressure on yourself to completely change the world. And maybe some people, they don't really get that. They don't think that's that big a deal. Like, why don't you just chill out, dude? But that's me. That's me in a nutshell right there. So when he said that in 4,000 Weeks, I was like, oh, I really needed to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he gets into it in this book a lot more, which I appreciate. The fact that it doesn't mean you're not trying to do things. It doesn't mean that what you do doesn't matter at all. But it's sort of like you have to accept the fact that you are limited in the amount of impact that you can really have, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you could completely change somebody's world. You just can't change everybody's life in the entire world, probably.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because he does kind of address that specific thing later on in the book.
So let me hit on one thing. We had a campus pastor when I was in college. Right. And I know I understand people have a bunch of different worldviews, but this is what made me think of is he would draw this line on the whiteboard or the chalkboard or the screen, right? And he would talk about like our time on that line, where the line is like in eternity, right? And it's like God's perspective is this gigantic line. And then he'd come in with like the tiniest little dot and he'd be like, boop, and he'd like put the dot on there. He'd be like, that is your impact. And that is like where you stand on God's eternal line. And I was like, oh, dang. Like that is such a small piece of that. And I kind of got a same vibe here as just there wasn't the Christian aspect of it as well. So I liked the approach to it. All right, let's move into part 1.
Okay, cool. So part 1 is really week 1, and that is being finite. And I don't know, if you were to summarize this whole thing, it's probably a lot like we were just talking about, but how would you describe the whole week 1 in a single sentence?
I don't know. I think setting expectations? Is that what I would say? It's this idea of like, let's look at the way the world thinks about this, and then let's look at the reality of it, or let's look at a different perspective on it. So like in some of these turned me away. So I think about like the day 1 title. It's worse than you think. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man, that's incredibly negative. And then he talks about the idea of the kayak and the super yacht, right? Like, so I think about like think about all these things, and like it's basically like resetting the foundation for a way to think about life. Like, I think that's what that's how I would summarize part 1.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. And you brought up the kayak and the super yacht. I mean, we could talk about that specific thing too. That was day 2. And there's a whole bunch of those visuals that he gives you and he kind of alludes to again throughout this book. That was a good one that I liked, but the one that I wanted to call out was day 5, too much information. There's a quote here from Idris Shah that says, people today are in danger of drowning in information, but because they have been taught that information is useful, they are more willing to drown than they need be. And that quote kind of feels like justification for, I just got back as we're recording this. I was in Boise last week recording videos for the PKM Stack video course that's going to be part of Life HQ. I'm going there on Monday to record another one on the creativity flywheel.
Nice.
But so I just recorded a whole bunch of videos on this PKM Stack concept, and it was really around like being intentional about the stuff that you consume. You can't collect everything. That just feeds FOMO. There's the answers out there somewhere. Really, it's just let's find what's useful and let's get more out of what we have. But he has a way to describe this in this chapter, which I thought was brilliant. He says, treat your to read pile like a river, not a bucket. And this I've fallen into this with RSS. I kind of felt like, well, I'm bad at RSS because I never can keep up with it. I set all these things up and then I go look at it and I get overwhelmed by the number of things there. And I kind of have always had this completionist attitude towards the RSS stuff because this is stuff I've chosen to subscribe to. I should be listening to this. I should be reading this. Same with podcasts, I think. And this is the best way I've heard this articulated where you don't have to complete all this. And the idea of the river, I mean, that was actually one of the videos that I recorded is be a river, not a reservoir.
Yep.
The whole idea of things just like flowing in front of you, I think is really cool. And it reminded me of, there's this sushi place my wife and I go to, and we never do the all you can eat, but they have an all you can eat, and they have the chefs in the middle and they're chopping the stuff up, and they'll do the special requests sometimes if it's slow. But essentially they just make things and they put them on these plates, and the boats will go by in the channel and you just pick the things off that you want. And I was like, that's the right approach to RSS. Yes. I love that idea.
So I could not agree with you more. That this was the one I wanted to bring up from day 5. And he further that statement says, that is to say, think of your backlog not as a container that gradually fills up, that it's your job to empty, but as a stream that flows past. And I think about this too, not only with read it later or podcasts or whatever it is, but I started to think about this with email. Like, I just can't keep up with all the email. Like, I just can't do it. And I understand this is going to tie into a principle later on down the road that we're going to talk about later on in this episode. I understand there's going to be consequences for that. But like, what I've found is if I try to respond to every email that comes in and do it in the way that I would want to, it bothers me. I freak out. Like I am really stressful and really anxious because I'm like, I can never hit inbox 0. I can never have a 0 inbox. And then as soon as I do it, it fills back up again. And like, it's super stressful to me. And I was like, oh, not just my to read pile. What if I do this with my email too? And it was like, beautiful.
With any sort of information input, this is the right mindset. Because the other thing is to resist the urge to stockpile knowledge. That's what people did with Evernote, is they just stockpiled these things and they stuck them in there. And, I can find that again if I need it, which I think is totally the wrong approach for reasons I get into in the BCAM Stack course.
Yep.
It's all fresh in my mind right now. But you don't really need to collect more things. You just need to make more out of the stuff that you've already got. If you were able to make that one single change, you'd feel a lot less stress and anxiety about how much information is out there.
Yep. All right. So let me go to my day. My day was day 3 here. And Mike, if this isn't how you want to do this, let me know. But we both get to pick a day, don't we?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. All right, cool. So my day was day 3. Day 3 has the title of you need only face the consequences. And what I like about the intention of this whole day is basically like, nobody's making you do anything.
I love this. I almost picked this one. I'm glad you picked it.
They never have been making you do anything. You are making up the fact that you think they're making you do anything. But what you need to understand is the choices you make have consequences, and be okay with that.
Yep.
Right? Like, and I was like, oh my goodness, like what an interesting way to think about life. Like, and I'll say one quote. I mean, I could list a bunch of them, but it's like, freedom isn't a matter of somehow wriggling free from the cost of your choice. That's never an option, right? It's basically just, are you willing to pay the costs? And I'm like, that is such a good idea. Freedom is about being willing to pay the cost for doing what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't thought of it that way. And I think it's a really fun way to think about it.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because I sort of went through this when I quit the day job. I wrestled with this. It's like, well, how can I quit my day job? I've got 5 kids at home. I've got a family to feed. I've got bills to pay. And it's not that I was making a ton of money at the day job and had these golden handcuffs, so to speak. But
yeah.
I empathize with like the general advice you would get from some of the brash online personalities is, well, just quit your job. You can do it. It's like, well, no, I can't.
Yeah.
And I had to work through that. And Rachel and I went through a fear setting exercise, kind of thought, what is the worst case scenario? And what if everything went wrong? What would we do? And that kind of helped us work through it. But this is the best way I've heard this articulated. Like, yeah, you are free to do whatever you want. You just have to face the consequences. And he also said that the consequences aren't optional. Basically, whatever choice you make, there are going to be consequences. Because I think we can often get real stuck in what's familiar and what we know and what we're currently doing. And we feel like there are no consequences if we just maintain our current path. But that was one of the things that was highlighted to me as I was thinking through the process and should I quit my job. The thing that really got me to do it was we've got kids at home and they've all got this kind of entrepreneurial bent. And we tell our kids, because this is what good parents do, like you can do anything, right? Whatever you put your mind to. I mean, there's limits there, but you get the idea. You want them to feel like they are capable, and we want to infuse a growth mindset into our kids where if they fail at something, it doesn't mean that they're terrible human beings or they can't do something. That just means that you got to figure out a different way to get what you want. So this has kind of always been at the forefront of our minds. And I was thinking through like, well, I tell my kids this, I have to model it because more is going to be caught than is taught. And if I'm telling them, yeah, go, do your thing. I guess a side note here, it's easy to think like, well, I am, let's just say over 40. Okay. So I wish I could be 18 again and I would start a blog and I would do all these things. But my time is past. That's sort of the argument that happens in your head. Mm-hmm. And I think like there maybe is a little bit of truth to that, but it's not totally true either. And so I had to fight that, I really just embrace the belief that, if I really do believe these things that I am telling my kids, then it's not too late for me. I can make this happen. And as we talked about in the last episode, feel like it's taken a while, but we're kind of there now. So it's a different conversation than, a couple of episodes ago if we would have read this. But that was the thing for me is like, well, if I'm going to teach my kids this mindset, I really have to show them what it looks like. And that was the thing that got me to pull the trigger. It's like I can't get to the end of my life and wonder, what would have happened if I did that? I felt like if I didn't have the guts to do this right now, it was sort of like, well, then everything that I've been saying is kind of a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you really like, what's that scene from Indiana Jones? Where he's got to step out into the chasm. Yeah. It's like, now we find out what you really believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I got you. No, I mean, it's a matter of, what you're dealing with there is opportunity costs, right? Like, okay, like if you stay in the same path, then there are opportunity costs to you, but you don't often call those consequences. You just think of those as like, oh, that's just the, thing I'm going to give up. But like, there's 100% opportunity costs there.
Yep.
All right. We ready to move to week 2? You want me to take week 2 for a minute?
Go for it.
All right. So week 2 is taking action. And essentially what we're going to do now is we're going to like kind of go from this, okay, we realized our current status, we realized how we are, we realized some of these details, and now we're going to think about like, how do we move forward, right? How do we actually do something? So you get a lot of the days here are all around this idea of doing something or and it's called taking action, but like go to the shed, the 3-hour rule, rules that serve life, all these things. So my day in this one is day 12, and it's rules that serve life. And he references Jerry Seinfeld, and he references the process that Seinfeld would go through. And what I like about this is basically like he calls out the rule that people think Jerry Seinfeld lived by, and then the actual rule that makes sense. He says a much better rule, indeed one that I think more accurately reflects Seinfeld's approach to his work, is do things daily, right? Just show up and do stuff, Can
I jump in real quickly? Because the Seinfeld strategy that you're talking about, this is something that's prevalent in the productivity space. And it's basically the story of how Seinfeld meets this young comic, and the comic asks him, how can I become good? And he's like, well, the way to become good is to write good material. The way to write good material is to write every day. So get this big calendar, put a big red X on every day. Like that was one of the first things that I encountered when I started studying productivity. So people kind of hold up this thing as, it's got a high, like elevated rank in the productivity world, but he mentions, because he was talking to Seinfeld. So this is like directly a direct source. Seinfeld said that that was a throwaway comment that he'd made and he forgot
Yep.
all about it. He thought it wasn't that big a deal.
Yep.
Which is an interesting detail that you miss in all the other places that you will hear about the Seinfeld strategy.
Yep. So basically it's do things daily-ish, right? Like just keep doing. And then what the other one I like here is it's a real small phrase, but it's like make concrete imperfect progress here and now.
Love that.
Make concrete imperfect progress here and now. And what I like about this is I think a lot of times we get in our own way that says, well, the context around me working right now isn't right. Or I'm just not in the mental space to do the work right now. Or I'm not going to do good work, so I'm just not going to do anything at all. And like I think we make a lot of excuses in terms of actually doing the work, right? And actually getting things done. When if we really just sat down or stood up or did whatever it was and like took the 5 minutes to work through that little bit of friction, then everything would just start flowing. Like, and it may not be great. It may not be our best day, our highest quality of writing or anything like that. But at the same time, we did something that day. We created something that day. And I know you have principles that tie right into this that you may want to unpack too. But it's like, I love this way of thinking about it in terms of show up daily-ish. Don't let, there's the other rule that says like, don't let 2 days go. So, okay, you miss one day, don't miss two. So like get back on the wagon, the next time. And I just really like this principle. So that's day 12.
Yeah, I love this principle too. And again, I almost picked this one, but the other thing that I jotted down from this, which I love, the unstated appeal of lost productivity advice, of lots of productivity advice, lies in the bewitching idea that there might be a rule or set of rules that would force accomplishment to occur. So essentially, it's like if we dial in these simple things, which is why like the standard advice is just do these 3 simple things and you'll save an hour a day every day for the rest of your life. Like it's these little life hacks. That's what is appealing to people. But I like the fact that he takes the contrarian approach to that. Regarding doing things daily-ish, I guess the way that I do this is I do track some habits on my daily note in Obsidian. And I try to get to the point where I can check the box at the end of the day. I can't always do it. I've got the chart so I can see the chains. But I think you're right that I have gotten to the point where I'm not putting the pressure on myself to don't break the chain. And like that's just this big thing that's hanging over me. I would prefer to write every day. If I don't write, then I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm also not beating myself up. I know that if I write more often than I don't write, then I'm going to have material.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
yeah. The one that I picked from this, which probably just because I'm thinking about the life theme stuff, but look for the life task. The life task, he mentions, is something that your life is asking of you. So it's a little bit different than our approach to the life theme, but I like this framing where the life task is really about not, what do you want to get out of life, but what is life asking of you? It kind of reminds me of that famous quote. I forget which president said it, but don't ask, what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. It's sort of that idea, but I think there is something powerful here. I think it is very much aligned with some of the stuff that we talk about in the life theme cohort. So for example, he mentions in this chapter or this day that a life task is something that only you can do. I do believe that your life theme is really tied into the things that you are uniquely positioned to do. So like if you're going to talk about passion isn't doing what you love. It's actually means to suffer. So you're going through some things, but it's so important to you that it's worth making it happen. So it's really like things that are important and things that suck. And if you had a Venn diagram, it would be, the place where that overlaps. And I feel like you could also kind of take that Venn diagram approach and that place where it overlaps. That's sort of, you could relabel that your duty in terms of the life task. And I think if you were looking for that, the fulfillment and the meaning and the purpose kind of come along for the ride. If you're able to really narrow that in. Now, I don't think it's super simple, and you probably have to try a bunch of stuff, and you might be surprised at the things that really bring you life. I mean, that's the whole part of the life theme process. The very first thing we do is the moments of impact. Like, when were the moments where you really came alive? It's probably, we've seen this with a lot of people that we work with in that cohort. They're probably things that were scary to you at the moment, but you went out and did it anyways. And then afterwards you found, oh, actually that was really cool. I think I want to do that again. Doesn't mean you're not terrified of it, but it's worth it.
Yeah. So let me ask for a clarification, because I interpreted something differently and I don't know. So does he say in here that the life task is something only you can do, or that it's something you can do? Or does he say both of those things? Because I grabbed it as like, it's something you're actually able to do. Like, even though it's hard, you actually can do it.
Well, the thing I jotted down was the line, a life task is something that only you can do.
Okay.
But also, the very first thing I jotted down under this section was, never mind what you want. What does life want of you?
Yeah.
So I think there's probably a little bit of overlap there.
Okay.
I think the thing that he's really hitting on here, not saying explicitly, but I mentioned the passion doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means. So the idea here is not look for the things that are fun, but if you're looking for the things that only you can do, you're finding these things and you're thinking to yourself, oh, somebody should really do that. But then you look around and you're like, well, no one else is in a better position to do this than I am. I may as well do that. And those are the things that ultimately I think become meaningful. Those are the hard things. So it does require you to have a little bit of that sense of duty, where it's like, this is something that needs to be done. Nobody's doing this. I'll raise my hand and I'll do it. Obviously, there's a caveat with that, because you can't just, assume all of the world's problems and try to fix them all. That's very much contrary to what he was talking about at the very beginning of the book. But I think you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I do. All right.
Should we go to week 3?
Yep. Week 3.
All right. So week 3 is titled Letting Go. And again, 7 different sections here. The one that I wanted to talk about is day 21, but I have a little bit of different reason for doing that. So I'll let you go first here if you want. What do you want to talk about from week 3?
So Mike and I both actually picked 21. And 21 has the title of What's an Interruption? Now, the reason why I picked What's an Interruption is because lately, and I don't know how long this has been, it might be years. Like, I have no idea how long this has been going on. But there is this thing where I feel like, oh, I'm constantly being interrupted. I'm constantly being interrupted. Like, I'm trying to do a thing and I'm constantly being interrupted. And it's not by any specific thing. It's kind of by everything. And I start to think to myself, well, hold on, right? Like, I don't think everything else is the problem. I think you are the problem. Like, I think this is a you thing, Cory. And I'm like, daggone it. It probably is a me thing. Like, it's probably something that I have to work through. And this one really made me think about, like, how do you live in a world where this stuff is going to happen and you don't treat it like an interruption, but you treat it like part of everyday life, and you treat it like this is the way the process works. And how are you okay with that? Because like right now, I can tell you that I don't feel like I'm okay with it. Like, I don't feel like I want to keep living in a world where I feel like I'm being interrupted, but I think I'm the problem. So I have to figure out, what do I do about that?
Yeah. Okay. So, what you do about that, I think there is a strategy you can take here. So as I was reading this, I was remembering Hyperfocus by Chris Bailey, and he's got a grid in that book, one of those like 2x2 grids that like kind of like the Eisenhower matrix.
Yep.
And it was about dealing with distractions and interruptions. And I'm trying to do this from memory, so forgive me if I get the labels wrong. On the top, so from left to right, there were things that are annoying, and then things that are fun. And then on the y-axis from top to bottom, there are things that you can control and things that you can't control. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a picture. The things that you can't control that's where the approach is simply, if it's annoying, you deal with it and you get back to what you were doing. If it's something that you can control, whether it's annoying or fun, you really want to do what you can to set the boundaries so that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But then the one that was kind of shocking to me was the things that you can't control but are kind of fun, just go enjoy them. And I remember reading that, thinking to myself, because I was working at home, having little kids that'll just barge into my office. It's like, well, I was writing and I was in flow state, and now like that's completely out the window because you wanted to play. And I can be upset about that, which actually means that it's going to take me longer to get back to what I was doing. Or I could just, well, I'm interrupted. I may as well just go shoot hoops for 15 minutes and then come back and pick it up again.
So hold on. Let me read the quote. Once your focus has been diverted, once the child has burst into the room, or the anxious thought, blah, 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 don't fight that fact. And I was like, oh, dang, like that's really good.
Yeah. So that grid that Chris Bailey talked about, that really what came up in the way that he was describing it here. And I think there's a lot of good stuff there. The reason I called this one out, and I might actually pick a different one now because I didn't realize that you had picked this one too. But my talking point here comes from the very beginning, and all I wrote was, don't be talking bad about time boxing. And I should say that I don't disagree completely with what he's saying. He's basically saying, like, don't hyper schedule a bunch of stuff and then get all bent out of shape when it doesn't go exactly according to plan. But when I'm talking about time boxing, which I think is one of the most effective productivity strategies I've ever implemented, but it has required me to get to the point where, okay, this is the intention. It's never going to go exactly this way, and that's completely fine. And I've also, over time, gotten more and more loose with it. So my blocks are bigger, and it's more just like a couple of things I'm trying to get done throughout the day, as opposed to I got to figure out where all 12 of these tasks are going to happen. Like, that doesn't work. So if that's what he's talking about with time boxing, then I totally agree. But time boxing in general, I think, is actually worthwhile, or time blocking.
Well, and that's what changed time boxing for me too, right? Because it never resonated with me when it was super fixed and super structured. But as soon as I said, really what time boxing is, it's a structured way for me to plan. And then by doing that planning process, I'm more productive throughout the week than it actually is having the plan that I've checked everything off of that list. It's like, otherwise I'm just kind of going into it haphazard. So I agree with you. I could not agree with you more. All right. So did you want to pick another one for this week?
Yeah, I do want to just touch on one other thing, which was day 20, set a quantity goal. Because this is also something that I talk about a lot, but he articulates it differently, which I really appreciated. He said that often the way to do the best work is to forget about the quality. And the easiest way to do that is to focus on the quantity instead. That makes a ton of sense. When I presented at MaxTalk a few years ago, I actually talked about the creativity flywheel piece. And one of the things that I mentioned in there was that quantity produces quality. And the slide that everybody liked the best was where I've got like 3 different poop emoji and then the diamond.
Okay.
And I really do believe that if you want to get good at something, really what you need to do is not be a perfectionist about it, but you need a whole bunch of feedback loops.
Yep.
And the thing that stood out to me as an example of this was when I first started podcasting. The very first podcast that I did, I remember Zach and I recorded like a demo episode for the productivity show before it came out. And it was like a 30-minute podcast. And it took me like 5 hours to edit it because I said probably about 1,000 times. And when I went back to edit it, I was trying to get out every single imperfection. So I was trying to edit out every And then I remember getting done with it and being like, this doesn't sound natural. And at that point, I was like, you just got to get better at speaking, dude. So I went and joined a Toastmasters group, and that helped out a ton. But I don't go back and I don't listen to those old episodes, and I don't go back and I don't read things that I wrote a long time ago. And even like some of the video courses that I made a long time ago, I have a real hard time going back and watching them again because it's very obvious to me how much I've learned and grown since I did that. And it's painful to to go back and watch the early work. So I guess the thing that I would echo here is just keep going and just keep growing. Don't worry about producing something good. Just produce something. He talks about focusing on quantity is the thing that overpowers perfectionism. And that was exactly what I needed several years ago. Having gone through it, I can tell you this is really good advice.
Yeah, there are two aspects of this that I've been taught elsewhere in life that I think are really, really great. So my doctoral advisor, basically, when we would write a paper, when we'd write anything, she would, no matter what stage of the writing process we were in, it would come back and have red all over every aspect of it. And you're thinking, like, this is the 5th revision of this. Like, why is it still red everywhere? Like, at some point we have to stop doing this. And then, at one point she explains to us, she's like, writing is revision, right? It's 100% revision. And she's like, you're never done revising. You just hit a deadline. And like, those were the two concepts that I took away from that is, one, writing is revision. I'm just going to keep writing. I'm going to write and I'm going to write and I'm going to write and I'm going to write. And then I'm going to revise and revise and revise and revise. And then the other thing is, like, I'm never done doing that. I just hit a deadline where I actually have to hit submit, and therefore it's going to be as good as it's going to be when I hit that submit deadline. And that has really changed the way I think about a lot of different things. Don't try, like, I mean, it's not that you're not trying to hit a goal. It's almost like you're trying to get above a floor.
Yeah.
Realizing that you'll never get to the top of the ceiling because that the ceiling keeps going up. As you get better, the ceiling goes up further, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good way to live life.
Yeah, which kind of gets into the whole idea of goals versus habits. But yeah, so I think that's all I got to say about that, though. Anything else you want to say before we move on to week 4?
Nope, I'm ready to go to week 4.
Okay, so week 4 is titled Showing Up. And this is kind of where he focuses on doing the actual work. And I like this one. I think this is a real effective way to end it. And he sort of is, he's addressing maybe some concerns that you've had from the very beginning about being finite and nothing I do really matters. This is kind of where he's like, well, it does matter. It just doesn't matter maybe as much as you thought it did prior to this whole journey. Yep. But the one that I really wanted to talk about from here, although I could probably talk about any of these, I really like this whole section. But day 23 is how to start from sanity. And I think this is something I have fallen into, where you get into this thing where you're chasing sanity. And this is sort of coupled with that goal mindset, where once I achieve this goal, once I do this thing, once I have this, then everything else gets easier and things settle down a little bit. So with the goals, you kind of are attaching this sanity to once you get across the finish line or once you get the ball into the end zone. And once you achieve that goal, it never produces the result that you think it's going to. You just see the next step now and you realize that the goalposts have moved and you have to keep going. So chasing sanity is sort of a pointless endeavor. And he says you can't strive for sanity. You have to start there, which he defines sanity as groundedness, even in times of unpleasantness. So this actually ties to task management as well. So we mentioned the RSS being the river, and I really liked that visual. The other visual I really, really liked comes from this section where he says, treat your to-do list as a menu. And I was like, yes, this is it. Because I've been working on these scripts and recording these videos on like the Life HQ stuff, all the task management, my philosophy with the essential lists. And every time I talk about this is the brain and it's giving me the suggestions, but I'm making my own list and I'm choosing 3 things that I'm going to add to that. People are like, but those things are due. And I never really could articulate exactly how I was able to just like disconnect from that. It's like, well, yeah, I might have a whole bunch of things that are due, but the reality is I'm not going to get to all that stuff. I have to be picky about the things that I'm going to engage with. And I'm not trying to optimize for urgency. I'm trying to optimize for importance. What's the really important thing for me to do today? And embracing my limits and my limited time, my limited resources. And the analogy of the to-do list as a menu is perfect, because there's all these different things that are presented before you, and you could pick any of these that are associated with all these different projects. That's essentially what my task dashboard is in Life HQ.
Yep.
That's the menu, right? And then the things that I am choosing, by forcing myself to just pick a couple of things, it's sort of like you get an appetizer, you get a main course, you get a dessert.
Exactly.
But you're not gonna bite off more than you can chew. You may like 12 different things on the menu, but you can't eat them all.
Yep. It's a really good analogy.
Yeah, I love this analogy, and I was curious if it resonated with you too. But
yeah, I was going to call this one out, but since you called this one out, I get to call out my other one from this section. Okay, so in the last 2 or 3 years, I have fallen into something that he describes really, really well. Basically, I'll get like a year and a half, 2 years of like email. And then I'm like, okay, I'm never going to get back to the beginning of that. And by this time, like whatever was written, a year and a half or 2 years ago, it doesn't matter anymore. Like nobody really cares. So I create a folder that says like 2024, 2025, right? Because I work in academic school years. And I take all those emails and I dump them into that folder because I know I can search for things if I need them. So therefore, if I need to get to it, I can. If I need to find that random email from a year and a half ago, I can. But it clears up my inbox and I don't have all that weight, sitting on me. The same thing happens with my desktop, because I use my desktop as a working interface, right? Like files go there that I'm working on in real time, but then I'll forget to go off and clear it. And so then there's like a million files all stacked on top of each other on the desktop. Well, every so often you just create a new folder, you put them together, you drag and you drop all those files in there and you're like, I can find this stuff if I need to, if I ever need to do down the road. Like, and this just happens in so many areas of my life to where it's like, okay, all of that cruft that I've built up, over the last year and a half, if I just pile that up and then I put it in a box somewhere, and I've not had many instances, maybe even any instances where that's come back to bite me and say, oh, you really should have kept all of those emails, all those 1,000 emails because of that one. And it's like, no, it just hasn't happened.
yeah.
And he describes this really, really well in this chapter. And I like it a lot.
So I want to give you maybe a suggestion. I'll share something that I do to battle the cruft, not with the emails specifically, but with the desktop. Okay. So most people have a computer desktop and they'll put files on there so they can drag them into other places. I don't do that. The place that I put things so that I can drag them other places is actually an app called Drop Zone. It's a shelf app. Mm-hmm. But there's an app called Desktop Curtain. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this.
Basically, it hides all the icons on your desktop.
I'm going to look at this.
So that's what I do. And I initially came across this app because I had a couple things on there that I didn't want to move yet when I was doing screencasts. And now I just leave this running all the time. And the desktop is essentially like a folder, like my to review folder, the things that sit on the desktop until I actually process them. But because Desktop Curtain is always running, it just hides all those files. So it's not cluttering when I'm looking at my computer.
This is a great tip. I'm going to have to look into this tip. This is a great tip.
It's either a great tip or my secret shame.
No. Because I mean, I've learned about myself over the many, many years now. I'm not going to stop doing this. Like I've had people make fun of me about this. I've looked at it and felt bad about it. And then I'm like, this is just how I operate. Like this is how my computer works. And I'm okay with it. Like at this point, it's just like, I'm stopping fighting it. I'm not going to fight it anymore. All right. So are we ready to go to my day next?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So my day is day 24 and it's called Scruffy Hospitality. And the reason why I like Scruffy Hospitality, and I was thinking through this, is I grew up in a scruffy hospitality home. So this feels very like home to me. So it means you're not waiting for everything in your house to be in order before you host and serve friends, right? It means that like basically you're okay with who you are and that things exist in a certain way. And it doesn't mean that you're like you don't do anything. It just means you don't try to reach perfectionism before you go out and like serve others and share with others. And I really love this idea. And what I really like about what he brings into it later is he talks about the fact that you're being generous towards these other people too. Because like they walk into your house and the house is the best example of this, but like they walk into your house and like everything's put together. It looks like nobody's lived there. And it's like, we've got 4 kids. We've got 4 boys. Trust me. People live in our house, right? Like the banisters are going to be scuffed. You know, the what is the thing on the bottom? Where the floor meets the wall. You know what I'm talking about, right? The
floorboards?
The floorboard. Like that stuff's going to be scuffed because kids are throwing toys at it and, you know, like Matchbox cars and stuff. So you can't live like this perfect life. And when people walk in and they go, oh, okay, normal people live here. Like this is a house where normal people live, and it's not some house where, you know, it's like you're walking around in like bubble or like eggshells and stuff. And I'm like, this is the way my brain works.
Yeah.
I won't tell you that this is exactly the way my home works. So Mike, you can read between the lines on this one. But what I will tell you is this is the way my brain works. And I really like this idea.
Well, I think that's kind of the whole point of this particular day is he calls out that, you know, if you're going to have people over, then you want everything to be perfect. But if you are going over to somebody's house and you see imperfection, you actually feel better about that than, so it's sort of like this double standard where you want things to not be like completely buttoned up for other people. You want things to be authentic and real when you go somewhere else. But then when people come to your house, you want everything buttoned up and perfect, which just the way that he describes it, as he does so often throughout this book, it's just kind of like, yeah, what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. But you don't live that way. Like, so, because I walk into somebody's house and so like, Mike, if I came over to your house and it looked like normal people lived there and there were toys on the floor and there was like homework setting on the table and all this stuff, I would think, oh yeah, like these are real people. Like these are normal people. There's a couple dishes in the sink, but there's not, you know, they're not slobs, you know, kind of a thing. And it's like, oh, I'm in a home. Like I'm not in like some fancy facility where they have servants walking around, like taking care of everything. I'm in somebody's house.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. I should actually call out one other thing from the day that I picked, if you're cool with this, before we go to the epilogue. He mentions a book which I think is very intriguing just based on the title, which is Anti-Time Management by Richie Norton. You're pumping your fist. You're excited.
I'm pumping my fist because I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to call it out, and I actually was going to maybe think about it as a bookworm book for the future.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean, I technically don't have a book yet for my next one. If you look at the Notion document, I forgot to fill that out. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I ordered this one already. So.
Awesome. I called it out because I wanted to read it for sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Shall we talk about the epilogue?
Let's do it. Epilogue.
Okay, so the epilogue is just an effective way to end this, I think. He's tying everything together, but it's not, you know, this is everything you need to know, and now do these 12 things, which seems like that's sort of the formula for a lot of these productivity books is I'm going to give you one topic for each of these chapters, and then I'm just going to recap them all in a bunch of single statements at the end to really drive my points home so you really get this. The first thing he says in the epilogue is that the journey is never complete, and it's certainly not going to be done in 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, hey, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. But by the way, this is just the beginning. You got a lot more work to do.
Yep.
Which I don't know how that makes you feel, but this is very in line with what I know of Oliver Burkeman. And I was like, of course he's going to end it this way. And it feels very authentic and real, which I actually appreciate.
He quotes a guy in here and he says, pick a trait that bothers you the most, right? And then ask yourself, like, how do you feel if that bugs you? And he literally says, it might dog you until the end of your days. And I'm thinking to myself, what a terrible way to think about this. Like, think about the thing that bothers you and say, it's never going away. You're going to do that forever until you die. Like, you're going to do this. Right. And basically he's just saying like, hey, you could be like all upset about this and you could be all whiny about this. And then you could just be like, well, if that happens, it's not that big of a deal. Like everything's going to be okay. And I need to just stop letting this bother me. And I was like, man, what a different perspective on life.
Yeah. So one of the things that that I jotted down from this is that in some ways you may never change your life at all, which I think is sort of addressing, I shouldn't say addressing, it's sort of like challenging this belief behind why a lot of people read these types of books. Is I am going to read this book because this guru has this system which is going to fix this pain point that I have. And I think there's some good in that, specifically the addressing the pain points. I think like that's actually pretty good advice. Look for books that are attempting to solve a problem that you are facing. I think that's actually, that's a good way a good filter for picking books to read. But I think the other side of that is no single system is going to just fix everything. And this is sort of something that I've learned over the hundreds of books that I've read as part of this bookworm process, both the books for the podcast and also all the Gap books, is you have to pick and choose the individual things from each book that resonate with you and figure out how that fits in your own life. You can't just copy paste somebody's system, which going all the way back to the very first bookworm book was Getting Things Done by David Allen. And this is the issue that everybody has with getting things done, is it is this prescriptive system. You buy 43 folders, you stick them in a filing cabinet, and now everything has a place and everything just clicks. And first couple of weeks, people are doing stuff like, yeah, this really works. And then eventually it just becomes too much and, oh, this doesn't work at all. The truth is somewhere in the middle. There's some good ideas here that you have to figure out how to apply for yourself. So I don't know. I mean, I know Oliver Burkeman well enough at this point because I've read a couple of his books that I knew he was going to kind of take the contrarian approach to this. And I don't think that you can't make change by reading books. I think you can change quite a bit from reading these books. But there's something valuable about recognizing that you may read the book, you may understand some things, you may try some things, they may not work. And you may not change at all from that whole process, and learning to be okay with that is a little bit difficult sometimes, but I think it's important.
Yep. I don't have anything else from the epilogue, Mike, so I'm good to start wrapping it up.
Okay. Well, I got a couple more things I'll just real briefly touch on. He mentions that our limitations actually make fresh starts impossible. I'd never really thought about this before, and I feel like, again, this is a little bit of a contrarian take, but sort of there's an element of truth that I completely agree with in this as well, where the fresh start thing, that really just reminds me of like the annual New Year's resolutions. This is the year I'm going to make a fresh start, and those never work. My approach to that has been the personal retreat process, where I do a personal retreat every quarter, and I'm not making a fresh start with that though. So I feel like the term fresh start, this is very carefully chosen and probably is central to this argument. Yeah, you probably can't make a complete fresh start. That doesn't mean that you can't change certain things. You just can't change everything. And so the fresh start, that's kind of like the big sweeping change. I think the better approach here is the small, I'm already doing this thing and I'm going to tweak this habit a little bit and change some routines. And that's ultimately going to produce the results that I'm looking for. But the whole like fresh start, the whole annual goal setting, those dates are completely arbitrary. So the last thing that he mentions here is that each moment represents a choice to be made. So it's not like January 1st came and went, you missed your opportunity to set goals this year and achieve something. Yep. You have the moment, you have the opportunity at any given moment to make the choice. And the way that he says this, kind of implicit, I think, in here is that any one choice is not more important than any other choice. And I think there's some truth to that. I don't know. There's a lot of choices that are being made, and you are the sum total of the choices that you've made. So we just need to get better at making better choices. But I also don't think they're all exactly the same. The choice to to leave my job or not was more significant than the choice of what am I going to eat for lunch today.
Yeah.
So recognize that. That's not what he's saying here either, but I just, in the course of the conversation, I feel like that's important to call out. All right, that's all I got for the epilogue. You ready to move on?
I am.
Okay. So next is action items. And I actually have to grab mine from my outline here, and I'm jotting down the time code. So if you're good with it, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I only had one, and I'm trying to. Okay, it's from the interruption one, so I'm trying to figure out what chapter that was or what day that was. It's day 21. So mine is I want to try to actively rethink interruptions, and I want to try to like ingrain this into my daily activities, right? So I think all of this is going to look like, from an action item standpoint, is I'm in the middle of working, I'm in the middle of doing something, my kid busts into the room, and all I want to do is not think interruption. You know what I mean? Like I want to think like, okay, engage with your child and then get back to work. Or I'm in the office at work and I'm working on the lesson prep and a student walks in, right? And I don't think interruption, I think help that student, right? Like be hospitable, help that student, and then get back to your work afterwards. And if I can, in, a couple weeks, a month or whatever it might be, if I can like reframe that to be like, this is life, and you don't get this perfect little cocoon of, focused thought with your non-lyrical music in the background, like if I can think that, that's a win. Like that's a win on this action item for me. So that's my only one that I'm gonna take away from this book. What about yours, Mike?
All right. Well, I've actually got two of them. Well, the first one is actually related to a previous action item. So this is sort of long-term follow-up. But from Storyworthy, I talked about how I wanted to start capturing those stories. Mm-hmm. And I've done that a couple of times. But one of the things that he mentioned in this book, and let me find the specific spot this comes from. I think it's day 19. A good time or a good story. So basically, everything that happens to you is either a good time or a good story. And I want to recognize the things that don't go my way, the quote unquote bad things. I want to start recognizing, oh, there's a story here.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that because there are those things that happen that I get frustrated about. And that's really what I'm looking for with this, is that frustration trigger that actually causing me to think about what is the story that I can capture from this moment that's happening right now. That's the first one. And then the second one is from the day 23, How to Start from Sanity, where sanity being groundedness. The action item here is to pay yourself first with your time. And I sort of already started doing this. The goal with this one, I think we talked about this a little bit in the pro show, because I got the crazy new studio set up, and then I've been going to the co-working space and doing the writing there because it's a better environment for that. That's how I see that playing out, is me going to the co-working space, which talked about the coffee maker and things like that. That's because I want to get there early, and I wanted the stuff there to make the coffee when I get there, as opposed to making it at home, waking people up, and then just dragging out being able to get into the office. I want to be able to go there, do my thing. Lunchtime comes. Now, whatever happens. I'm going to go home. I'm going to record some videos. I'm going to do whatever. That's the goal with that. That's what I mean by pay yourself first with your time. The thing that I want to really just kind of focus on with that is the writing. That is the place where the writing happens. If I end up going there early, paying myself first, and then falling into admin mode, that is a failure in my opinion. So that's not what I'm going for with this. Kind of specifically, I want that place and that environment to kind of be for writing and the creative process. And I feel like if I could just do that for a couple of hours every single day. He talks about that in here too. We didn't talk about that one. I think it was maybe Taking Action, week 2, about the 3 hours.
The 3 hours, yeah.
3 hours is all you're going to get in terms of real deep creative work.
Yep.
Well, if I can get there by 8, do my 3 creative hours, take a break in the middle for a cup of coffee. I can still be done by noon.
Exactly.
So those are mine.
Awesome.
Okay. Style and rating.
Your book, you start.
Yeah. It's hard to rate this one just based on the format of it. And I don't know if that's just me not being able to get over the fact that I picked like a daily reader for a bookworm book, which is a terrible idea. Okay.
It's not you. I'm struggling with the same thing.
Yeah. So the stuff that's in here is really good. A lot of the stuff that's in here is I'm not going to say a rehash of 4,000 Weeks, but it is, he has talked about these things before. I actually got a lot out of reading this after reading 4,000 Weeks. He alludes to 4,000 Weeks a couple times, but I feel like at this point he's had more time and more experience. And so he's sort of gone through a process of distilling these ideas down. And so when he talks about them again in this book, it doesn't read like the same sort of thing. It reads fresh, but it's also very much in alignment with the material from that book. Man, I don't know how to rate this. I think if I was doing this myself, I would tend to rate this a little bit lower just based on the 4-week, 28-day format. I will say that the way we worked through the outline, I think was cool, and I got a lot out of the conversation. Mm-hmm. I think that probably bumped it up a little bit in my estimation. I also absolutely loved 4,000 Weeks. I really like Oliver Burkeman. I don't think I can rate this a 5-star book though, just based on the format. I think I definitely would recommend this one. I think everyone should pick this one up. If you are interested in bookworm at all, I mean, this is going to speak to a lot of the topics that we talk about, but as we mentioned throughout this episode, he presents things in a different way than most other people in this space. And that is very refreshing. I like Oliver Burkeman's tone. It's almost like I'm a productivity guy, but I'm going to be sarcastic and make fun of it a little bit.
Yep.
Which I appreciate. I think that's needed in this space. So I'm going to rate it at 4 stars. I'm kind of curious where you land on this, and that's just my own, I'm not doing half stars anymore. I think, if you look at the 5-star books that we have read, even the most recent one with Good Work, it's not quite to that level, but it's almost not the book's fault. It's like it's not trying to be that. It's more approachable. Let me just give you a bunch of things to think about, as opposed to let me completely change your world.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's a good thing. That's not really an argument could be made that's not a reason to dock it a star. You could make the opposite argument. That's actually a reason to give it another star. So, but I really do like this book. I think people should pick it up. It's a really easy read. I would recommend you probably read through it the way that it's designed to be read, not the way that we did it. So a day at a time, go through it and really marinate on the ideas that are in here. But a lot of this stuff is not, brand new, transformational. Never thought of it that way before, but definitely adds some context and some commentary for a lot of the things that I have been chewing on just based on all the other productivity books that we've read, and really am glad that we took the time to go through this one.
All right. So I said earlier, I came into this one thinking it was a very different book, right? I thought it was meditation for mortals, and he was going to talk to us about meditation. I quickly realized that it was meditations for mortals, and it was very different than what I thought it was going to be. But what I'll say from that is I really like this book. So I have read 4,000 Weeks before. I came in with a positive view of Burkeman and his style and the content that he produces. I thought it was good. I thought it lived up to the expectation that I had coming in from one of his books. I would wholeheartedly agree with you that if somebody's going to read this, do it in the way that he suggests you read it. Do it as a 4-week book. Do one day at a time. I think it'll be a better book you'll have a better experience with the book doing it that way. I think the things that he talks about are very relevant. There are a few caveats where like I just didn't resonate as much with one of the days. Right. And I was just like, oh, well, that day was fine, but I don't really care. Like I could never read that again and be okay. But then there were other days where I was like, man, that's a good one. I need to remember that and like reread that later on down the road. Just to kind of, rehash that point when it becomes relevant for me. I thought this one was a fun one to talk about, even though we read it in a way that it wasn't meant to be. Like it was a fun one to break down because the ideas were very distinct and like, day by day. So you could actually get to those individual ideas, but at the same time, they were bundled in what I thought was a really authentic and kind of reasonable way, even though he was probably trying to get it 7 of them, wrapped up into a week, kind of a thing. But I didn't think it felt forced, which was really good. All right. So now we get to the rating. I think, so I'm going to rate this book 4 stars. I feel strongly that if we'd have read it in 28 days, the way it was designed, I think I'd rate it a 4.5. I don't think this book gets to a 5 for me. Like, it's good. It's not that it's bad or anything like that. I just don't think it raises to the level of the books that I've thought were 5 stars or the takeaways that I've gotten from other books. This one was more of a confirming things that I had thought about and a lot of times expressing them more clearly than I've expressed them in my own head. So that's what stands a 4.5 star book from a 5-star book. And then the other half a star is probably our fault, right? Like in the way that we chose to read it. So that's probably not fair, but at the same time, this is our rating scheme and it's our show. So we get to do what we're going to do with it. So hopefully people don't read that and think like, oh, 4-star book, less good. It's more a 4-star book that's because it's meant to be read in a certain way. But overall, I definitely recommend this to people, especially people who are, I'm going to say this and hopefully it doesn't offend people, especially people who are like more type A, more goal-driven, more perfectionist type people. I think this would be a really, really good book for them to just have a different perspective to think through. And they may hate it, they may not resonate with it, but at the same time, I think it'd be a really good read for them to like just kind of see a different but well articulated way of thinking. So that's where my rating goes.
Yeah, I think this might be the only double 4 book that I would absolutely unequivocally recommend to absolutely anybody.
That's interesting. That's an interesting. You're kind of like the baseball stats guy, right? Like where you can find a stat for anything, Mike.
Well, I don't know that that's completely true. I'd have to look back through the catalog, but I agree with you. He had directly addresses the entrepreneurs that you were describing at the beginning of the book. Yeah. So those are the people who need this the most, I would argue. And I think I'm probably one of them. So
yeah. Well, there was a lot that I resonated with in this book too. So I'm with you on that.
Cool. So let's put Meditations for Mortals on the shelf. What is next, Cory?
So the next book is called Free Time, Lose the Busy Work, Love the Business by Jenny Blake. And Mike, this is one that you recommended that I stole from you, and I'm happy to steal it. It actually, interestingly enough, Oliver Burkeman endorses this book. So he's one of the people
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's one of the people that endorses this book. And it's basically a book about time and a book about the importance of time. And then how like free time plays into that. You get into this idea. She's going to walk us through this 3-staged free time framework, which I'm interested to see how that goes. But she is co-creator of Google's Career Guru coaching program. So interesting background, interesting context for a book. It's basically not about being lazy or about not doing work. It's about rethinking about your time and how that goes into it. So our next book is Free Time, Lose the Busy Work, Love the Business by Jenny Blake. Pick that up if you're reading along with us. Mike, how about you? What's 2 books from now?
I'm going to go ahead and pick the one that you were excited about, the Anti-Time Management by Richie Norton. I have heard of Richie Norton before. I've never actually read anything that he has written. I know I have another Richie Norton book in my house somewhere. But the whole idea of the anti-time management, I just think that at the very least, that's going to be a really fun conversation.
Reclaim your time and revolutionize your results with the power of time tipping. Ooh, interesting.
Yep. Time tipping sounds interesting. You got any Gap books?
So I started a Gap book last time. It's called Just Do Something. I'm going to keep doing that one. I got about halfway through it, so I'm going to finish that one in this gap period.
Okay. I probably will not get to a Gap book. I didn't even pick up my Gap book from last time. And I'm going to be gone all next week. I'm going to be recording more videos, and then I'm going to a conference. So I probably will read something, but I don't know what it's going to be yet. And it might just be free time.
Awesome.
We'll see.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you specifically to the Bookworm Pro supporters. If you want to become a Bookworm Pro supporter, help us keep the lights on, that would be very much appreciated. You can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm, and for $7 a month, you can support the show, and you get a couple of bonuses. You get access to a bootleg feed, which gets uploaded right after we get done recording. So there's no editing in this bootleg episode. You get to hear me stop the episode and go yell at my kids because they're being noisy outside my office door. All that stuff gets edited out of the main show, but bootleg, you get to hear it all. There's also a pro show which has a bonus topic and no ads. So today we talked about my new studio setup and all the fancy camera gear that I got for new video projects that I'm working on. There's also a 4K Bookworm wallpaper that you can download. And all of those are available to the Bookworm Pro members. So again, if you want to support the show, you can do that. Patreon.com/bookwormfm for $7 a month.
Thank you all. And if you're reading along with us, let's pick up Free Time, Lose the Busy Work, Love the Business by Jenny Blake. And we'll talk to you all next time.